Well, every road I see leads away from me. There's not a single one that leads me home. The road keeps saying, friend, come see what's round the bend. So is it any wonder that I roam? All the places I have been keep calling me back again. Down in the pines I hear the cold winds blow. My heart keeps telling me, footloose and fancy free, and the road goes by and calls me as it goes. Well, maybe somewhere there's a someone waiting with a smile, and maybe there'll be some place I can stop and rest a while. And maybe you weren't meant to be just a rolling stone, and there's a road to travel on that leads you back to home. I messed that all up. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another very impromptu, didn't really plan this out, if you can hear me, hopefully, episode of Tales of the Trails. You get back to doing the reload show someday. But I have a special guest here today. Ta-da! For all 21 of you out there, wow, a lot of people came in pretty quick. I'm going to take this headphone out tonight because I don't need it.
This may be the episode where we get to see me flip over backwards in this chair.
I got him in my good office chair. It's real good. I sit here.
If you want to learn how to ride a bronc, this is the one to do it on.
I sit here and rock back and forth on that thing all day.
Man.
Sometimes I do go all the way back and I have to kick my feet up behind the desk to keep from falling over.
That may happen. Yet tonight.
You got 1 foot of desk there, not very much. Okay, so we have Diane Houston said, good evening, all. Jason Dunham said, finally get a catch one live. Louisiana Gray said, good evening, fellas. And iPod Walker said, hi. Let me know if you can hear us because we don't have anybody to bounce off of.
Yeah, because I'm over here today, not over there.
Yeah, we need to, you know what we need to do?
We need to turn the light on for
put
one.
some
You can't
light
see my face.
on Duke's
there
face.
We go.
Yeah, that's too bright. Let's not make it that. Let's hide him a little bit. So anyway, now they can hear us. We don't have a whole lot of a topic tonight. I got a spot on my shirt. But anyway, we're just here to answer questions and visit with you guys and have some fun, eh, dude?
Yeah.
Unless you got something you want to talk about, I dropped my lid.
No, I'm too tired.
Yeah, Duke made the trip yesterday all the way from Colorado over to Kansas, and he's been sewing like a madman all afternoon.
Uh-huh. 4 hours driving across the flattest country.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty flat till you get here. Then it's not so bad.
After you get past Goodland and turn south, then it gets a little more like home, but not quite.
Are you saying you wouldn't make a plainsman?
Well, I don't know. I like to see mountains.
What do you think of Buffalo Bill and Wild Bill Hickok? All those guys, they was running up Fort Larned, Fort Hays. They ain't nothing up there but flat ground.
Yeah, well, they had buffalo to stop and shoot for entertainment along the way, too.
And the thing is, it looks flat until you actually try to cross it.
Yeah.
Then it's every 10-foot ravine. Every
ravine. Yeah.
Nothing you can see, just annoying.
It's not like I-70 flat.
Yeah, we got Turkey Creeks in, and let's see who all we got. We got Timber Drifter. iPod Walker said we're good. Timber Drifter said good evening. I can hear you. Kent said evening. Y'all sound good. Thank you very much. Jason Dunham said reloading. Y'all 5x5. Turkey Creek 1823 is in. Hi, TC. He said, hey, just saw this. You're always sneaking up on the blind side. Well, we've been talking today about that $200,000 hawking that killed more buffalo than Sharps and Winchesters put together. I sent that to Turkey Creek, and he got a kick out of that. Todd B said, howdy, boys. The gang's all together. iPod Walker said, have you been to the Ranger Museum in Waco, Texas? I haven't.
I ain't been south of Amarillo.
But I'm pretty sure. I almost bet you Doug Dukes has.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I've never been south of Amarillo either.
Yeah, I've never been. Actually, I don't even think we made it to Amarillo. We made it halfway to Amarillo. So I haven't been halfway to Amarillo from Boise City, Oklahoma.
I've been to Amarillo. That's about it. That's as far south as I've been.
I've been further south than that in Oklahoma, just not Texas.
Yeah. Well, you know, Texas ain't very far from right here. You should cross that panhandle. You can be there in 2 hours.
Yeah.
I had a friend one time. We were working on the oil rigs, and he told us that he was going to be there for work, and he wasn't at work. He got drunk the night before and went out looking for buffaloes on Ted Turner's ranch. And he didn't know Texas wasn't that far down there. He called us and said, I'm lost. And we said, where you at? I'm somewhere on the Ted Turner ranch in Kansas. He said, let me ask this farmer. And the guy said, you're in Texas. And he about fell out of his chair and said, I got a court date this afternoon. I said, well, luckily you may have been drunk, but you didn't go as far as you thought. It's only about 2 hours. See? But that guy told him he was in Texas. I think he thought he might have been gone all the way to San Antonio or somewhere.
Actually, if I had to take off driving and went to Texas, I'd have got to Texas faster than I did getting here.
Yep. All right. There was a couple questions here. Let's see. Arizona Frontiersman, AZ Front. I always say Arizona. I assume AZ Frontiersman is Arizona. I'll just say AZ Frontiersman. Said evening amigos, and the Tennessean said howdy folks, and name. Oh, howdy. Would you consider making a video on how y'all improve the looks of those lacquered flintlock stocks? I think Ethan has.
Well, the first thing you do is you go buy you some sandpaper.
Well,
and then you do a lot of this.
Acetone or stripper first.
That'll make it go faster.
Because you don't want to sand the edges down too much without.
But yeah, then you take the sandpaper and you go like this for a while, and then you go like that for a while.
The secret to those guns, what they really like is, I did mine with a walnut stain because I didn't like that teak look that's under there. But if you don't mind the blonde look, the secret to a good finish on those is just sand them down. They accept linseed oil really, really well. And you just coat after coat after coat after coat, and or tung oil, and just seal them up with that stuff. But I did mine with a walnut stain just so that I could go back, and then I linseed oiled over that. But it was a oil-based stain, and that looked pretty good because I don't like that teak look on everything. So yeah, but right now, as far as Ethan does some of those videos. And he had a series going on the wheel lock building. I don't know if he's going to finish it or not. He might, but YouTube has been hammering the living daylights out of us every time he puts one of those videos up. He has to stop, take it down. He has to, what do you call it? When they send you the claim or the deal, you have to appeal it. And he has to do all that. And then if he's lucky, they go up. And so I don't know. That's probably why he hasn't put one up in a couple of weeks. All that and some other stuff we've been dealing with. But
and it's like there's a few videos of mine on there. It's like I'm surprised they haven't been taken down. I got in trouble because they get a lot of views, but so far nobody's hit me on them yet.
And now people ask, well, the bigger channels do it, and it's always like, well, they
make YouTube money. YouTube don't care if they follow the rules.
Well, Ian McCollum had somebody on Forgotten Weapons the other day asked him, why don't you do fully automatic machine gun videos like some of these other guys do? And he said, because half those other guys have been struck and you don't see them anymore.
Yeah, that's true too.
The other half have been lucky. If you want to play with fire, I don't know about you, but I put too much work into my channel. Just watch it go.
Not that I put a lot of work in my channel anymore. I put more work in the podcast than I do the channel.
Yeah, well, we're going to put something on your channel pretty soon.
Yeah. Hey, I finally got the notice that we went live.
Well, that's good. We got 34 people in here.
All right.
Oh, so anything you guys want to talk about out there, shout it out. I guess if you don't, then we're just going to talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah, the only excitement we got is we're getting ready to head up to Fort Larned to do some living history. So, yeah, Garrett's coming up there, and it's going to be they're heading up Friday, but the main thing's going to be Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I'm taking off early on, or midday and Sunday. Drive back to Colorado, and so I'm not going to be able to do the full thing, but going to be there for a good portion of it. Good to see the excitement on Saturday at least.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Don't worry, we're still going.
Oh, I was starting to say,
what
happened?
It does that about every
all
10
of a
minutes.
sudden, a new page popped up there, and I'm like, did we get struck down again? We didn't touch a gun in this one.
No, iPod, we're not taking any horses this time. When I reenacted locally, or when I used to, I'd take a horse. But my last good gun horse died 2 winters ago. Last winter, maybe it was 2 winters ago. And I haven't trained another one yet. And ground's harder than it used to be. We got horses we could ride, but I just don't know. I don't know how much gunfire be going on up there anyway. But I don't know. It's my first time around. I'm going to go up there pretty easy as I can.
The only gunfire is Park Service, the ones the Park Service trains. So we won't be going through it. It's just soldiers doing that.
The Tennessean said, is there going to be a video on your Fox side-by-side? Well, we have 3 of them around here. We need to do one, I guess. I recently actually just sold that one to Caleb to fund a bunch of clothes. Reenacting, and
it's expensive.
Whenever I do it, just like Historic Emporium or something, when I do the lighter end reenacting, it's always like, you might be $200 into clothes. And when you try to get stitch counter, you hit $1,000 in a heartbeat.
I bought a pair of pants and a vest because I already had the shirt. But a pair of vest and pants is just under $300 or just over $300.
Yeah.
And I got to get a dress coat too. It's a good thing somebody, a good friend of mine, gave me a buckskin jacket for free.
I just got these in, and these are actually, I thought they were $high, but you said yours was way more than these.
But then mine look just as good as them.
Yeah, these are $300, like with tax and everything.
I think mine running that 4 to 5.
I think with tax and everything, he's come in at $350 from South Union Mills, and I ordered that, and I ordered their Excelsior line, and it wound up being a mistake because I gave I think it was $180 for a vest and about that much for a pair of pants too.
Yeah.
But there was a mistake in the order, and they didn't get shipped in time, so they'll be there for another day.
That's the thing on South Union Mills, that Excelsior line. It's pretty good quality stuff. But that's some of the stuff that he has in stock ready to go, but you pay a little bit more for it because it's just a little bit finer quality. Stuff I ordered is the one that you got to wait, up to 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes a little bit more, depends on what he's got for orders. But I won't say that it's not good quality, but it is. I'm not going to say it's not bad quality. It's good quality, but it's not quite what that Excelsior line is. But no, the South Union Mill stuff is good. It's great stuff. The only qualm I got about it is when you buy the pants, and this is from experience, the pants wear out, especially when you're wearing them every day. Like when I was working in living history, they will wear out fast, which is historically correct. You read guys going up Bozeman Trail. One guy wrote in his diary he went through 3 pairs of pants between the Deer Creek Station and the Montana Goldfields, and it's not that far a distance. So, yeah, you'll wear them out fast.
How quick do you go through your buckskins?
Buckskins, you can get if you're wearing them every day, you can get a year or 2 out of them.
So longer than wool?
Yeah.
Because the wool's not so tightly woven in that era. Is that the trouble?
Well, the wool just, when it abrades,
yeah,
it's hair.
Yeah.
Whereas the skin, that's designed to be, hold guts and everything inside of an animal, so it's a little tougher.
Let's see.
And sweat is the number one killer for any clothing. Sweat will eat up clothing so fast.
Tennessee, and about that fox, we haven't got many views on guns from the 20th century, but if you guys want to see it, I can get us to make one here in a week or 2 on that. It'd be an easy video to do. Diane Houston said, do they have vendors there?
I don't know. I don't think, Park Service usually don't let the vendors come in much anymore.
I've been going to this one for, ever since about 1992 anyway, and I never reacted in it, but I don't remember seeing like a setup vendor. Like there were points when the native reenactors, you could buy stuff from them,
Yeah.
But I don't think it was like a
And
event.
I think that's about the only, as the Native Americans are the only ones that really can sell at those events.
Yeah. There's been so long since there's actually been any there that I've seen that.
I just know that, the Park Service ones that, there's not many little good ones left for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, Tennessean, if you like some side-by-sides, I hope to be putting a Caplock side-by-side on the channel too here. Now, we have one that doesn't have hammers. It's the one thing we've always been lacking in is a good percussion double-barrel shotgun. So I might have one coming. But
get the 10 gauge, it's better.
Well, one I got my eye on is made in 1835, and it's a 12 gauge, and it might go for my
original
price because it's got the right hammer, even though it's intact. The very tip of it's chipped, so I might get it for the price I need for.
I was thinking just a Pedersoli reproduction, get the 10 gauge, and then.
Yeah, I thought about that, but you know what a Pedersoli reproduction 10 gauge like that costs now?
$1,400.
Yeah,
I know. I looked at them the other day.
You can get an original for $6 a lot of times. But they're pretty spendy, let's put it that way. Yeah, and I was talking to Turkey Creek about how that, especially in the later fur trade, they're probably more predominant than people documented.
Let's see. Lewis Gerard picks up one. There's another guy that has one. Yeah, you start seeing them. Double barrel shotguns coming out.
But it would also, it's one of those things where I actually have a decent 1870s made Belgian made shotgun in there, double hammered with cartridges with the side flipper. You've seen that?
Yeah, I've seen the one hanging in there.
Yeah, and I got to thinking that's a good one. But if you got a percussion shotgun, man, you can cover so much territory.
Yeah, you can cover from late 18. Because I honestly don't know when the first cartridge shotguns start showing up.
I actually read that they were a thing in brass shells in the late 1860s.
Okay.
But I would feel more comfortable as a reenactor if I was doing late 1860s with percussion gun as far as being.
Because I've never seen an original double barrel shotgun from earlier than the 1870s.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't either. You're talking about cartridge gun.
Yeah, because like that Colt, you've got one, I got one.
The 78.
That's 78, yeah. And then I know there was a few of the European patterns.
British were putting them out early,
but I don't know exactly what year they started coming about.
Well, I did some research when I was thinking about this, and from what I could tell, the brass cartridges come out before paper cartridges. Yeah. And the brass cartridge shotguns you started seeing, I think British is a British thing in the 1865, 66, 60. Okay. About the time that other cartridges were coming along.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's Salvador. Hi.
Hi, Salvador. Hopefully we're going to see you in a couple days.
Yeah.
Like Friday.
You didn't tell your scouts to hurt. You didn't let them know. You should have told them earlier.
Oh, I've been meaning to call him. I just haven't got a hold of him.
So anyway, I think there was a pinfire shotgun in the 1840s. So it's not something I've studied in detail, but I've kind of just listened to some documentaries and stuff here lately.
It's one of those things that, like, you go home and you look at my gun safe. The two most common guns you're going to see in there besides Kent ball and pistols is shotguns. Yeah. And for being somebody that has as many shotguns as I got, I don't know doodly squat on shotguns.
And for historical purposes, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I know
there was a lever action 78. I know Colt put out a double barrel Colt put a double barrel out in 78. Winchester put out a lever action in 87. And then you got the 97 pump action.
Britain was cranking those things over here, I think, before those guys by quite a bit. And you see a lot of British pattern guns. You see, of course, a lot of American guns too. But when you think about it, it's like, I'm trying to think, like Purdy started putting out double barrels like early, even and some of those other British makers, and they'd have been here for sure. But it seems like every time you read about a shotgun in that period, it's muzzleloader.
Yeah. So I know the Texas Rangers had, they liked the double barrel shotguns, 10 and 12 gauge.
Mm-hmm. And we just talked last week about at the hayfield fight that 10 gauge with the 16 pellets of buckshot in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that was Al Creighton's shotgun, because he was the sutler for Fort Reno and Fort Phil Kearny and Fort C.F. Smith, because he's the one that hired the hay contractors to go out and cut hay. That's why they had his shotgun, which was the 10 gauge.
I look for a 10 gauge. They tend to run about $300 more than 12 gauge for original.
I'll just buy the Pedersoli.
Yeah, and buy 5 originals for the cost of 3 for the cost of the Pedersoli.
Yeah, but then you don't feel bad when you don't break an original.
I would feel worse about breaking a $1,400 Pedersoli. Sometimes you just can't do that. And if you want historical authenticity, the one I want, Pedersoli don't make, because I want a back action.
They do make a back action.
They make a back action lock?
Yeah. It's called the Baker 20 gauge. It's that
little short
with
thing?
that long stock on it. Yeah, they're back action.
Yeah, I guess they do, but I don't need another 20 gauge. But you do have quite a few historical shotguns in there, or you did. Well, you had the lever action.
Yeah, that's Caleb's now.
And you have your 1897.
Yeah.
You have your 1878.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of them.
Yeah, I don't have, other than that 78, I don't have many double barrels.
Double barrel ever since I was younger. That was.
The thing of it is, that one is dated to us. Granted, most people, when it comes to historical guns that come to those reenactments, want to know a Colt double barrel from a Greener double barrel.
Mm-hmm.
But that one's got the date stamp 1878. And that's why guns are such a great date stamp, is because they don't ever show up before they're invented.
That's true. Another historical shotgun, the 1881 trapdoor.
Well, that's true too.
20 gauge.
But
well, I have a smoothbore up there that is an infield percussion that was bored out to I think it's a 60. It's a 62 bored out from 58 to smoothbore 62. So that would have been a common shotgun.
Yeah, it's a 20 gauge.
A single barrel. Yeah. Muzzle loader. Let's see what we got here. Well, Mill Creek, you're seeing double.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jared, I think there was a pinfire shotgun. I haven't studied up that much on it. Let's see. Mill Creek Range said, what in tarnation, what kind of voodoo is this that I'm seeing? You're seeing double. Salvador said pinfires were popular in Europe. I showed Duke a bracelet for pinfire cartridges.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like,
I do remember that.
Made out of them, or it holds them? Or did he say a brace?
Did you send that to me on text message? Or did you send that to me on email? I don't remember.
Tennessean said, I just picked up a Lafayette. I've always pronounced it that way. It's probably wrong. Lafayette. That's how I pronounce it. Side by side, made in 1906. All I can say is, and you probably know this already, Tennessean, is make sure that you aren't shooting 2 3/4 inch shells in a 2 9/16 inch chamber from that era. If it's a 12 gauge or a 20 gauge.
Oh yeah, there it is. That's for cartridges.
It holds them. That's cool. Let's see. Gunsmith 4570 said a lot of Belgian guns were being imported, sometimes to local hardware store names. Yeah, and a lot of them say W. Richards because they want to be Wesley Richards, even though they're not, because Wesley Richards
is kind of like Derringer.
Is expensive. Yeah, that one I got in there.
There's one actual Derringer. All the rest, they just took the Derringer name. But that was that one particular brand that was really good. And so then that's how Pocket Pistol got the Derringer name, was because that one particular gun. It's kind of like how all lever actions are a Winchester.
Yep, every one of them.
And now all lever actions are a Henry.
And all trapdoors are 1870. But anyway, moving on. Yeah, that one I have in there is a Belgian-made one. And they're kind of interesting because the Belgian-made ones strike my fancy a little bit too, just because that's the common.
Right.
They would have been, like he said, the hardware store cheap, imports. Benjamin MG said, however, according to test fire record of the Prussians, the accuracy of Prussian self-priming muskets. I must have missed the first one. Okay, he said, I heard about the existence of self-priming flintlock muskets, and people said the enlarged touch hole will affect the accuracy of the musket. However, according to the test fire record, Now, the Prussians, the accuracy of Prussian self-priming musket was not bad at all. So did the Prussians. I don't know about the Prussians, but I know the natives did it.
Yeah, the natives did do that. Yeah, they draw out that touch hole so that they just close the frizzen, cock it, pour powder down the barrel, spit a ball in, slap it on the side to prime that pan, and it was ready to go. But you do lose quite a bit of more gas out that touch hole. I don't know what it's going to affect in terms of feet per second compared to one that doesn't have one drilled out, but you are losing more energy out the side.
And before they put touch hole liners in a lot of them, those holes naturally got big enough.
Yeah, they will naturally. They
erode.
Because you figure that black powder's flashing at 4,000. What was it? 4,000 degrees.
I don't know. I just know that Ethan has a couple of original military muskets over there that you could do that with.
Yeah. The thing is the heat of that black powder when it flashes, that's going to cause a little bit of erosion of the, not to mention that it's corrosive, but then the action of cleaning that out. So touch holes did enlarge over time. But I know there's one historical record. I think it was in Osborne Russell's Journal of Trapper. Talks about one of the trappers saying that his rifle was shot out because the touch hole was worn out and he traded for a new gun.
Yeah, and Santee was asking me that the other day about, especially early on, gunsmiths in the fur trade era and on up through the Civil War in the West. And I said, yeah, they were there, but a lot of people give credence too much to the high-end guns being there versus I'll trade you this gun back. You take it back to somebody back east. They may fix it up and sell it.
And that's the thing. I'm like, when it comes to smiths, you go back east, you'll find gunsmiths that work on guns, build guns, whatever. They could probably fix whatever was wrong with your gun, whether they built it or not. Back east, you get specialists. That's what I'm trying to get at. You get out west, your blacksmith is your gunsmith. He is your wagon repairman. Wagonsmith, wheelwright. That's what I was looking for. So, yeah, out here in the West, it's whoever's got the skill to work iron is going to fix the iron parts in your gun. Whoever's got the skill to work wood is going to fix the wood parts of your gun.
Unless my thing would be when you're in a company or you're in an era of the trade rifle or smoothbore, how often are you not just going to trade it away with a few extra pelts and get another one?
But here's the thing, too. If you look on like the fur trade records of everything they were bringing out west.
Parts.
Gun locks. Mainspring vices. They're bringing out the parts for these guns. The parts that wear out the fastest.
Now, this is the interesting thing, though, because those gun parts only fit on a certain gun.
They put it in there as like they'll list them as large locks or versus small locks.
But, like, here's the thing. Your custom-made Hawken, you're not just going to get...
You're probably not going to find a lock that's going to fit perfect.
Or you're not going to find springs that just fit perfect, unless they're bringing those. But if you have a Northwest gun, or if you have a... what's their names? They have the pistols. Or Henry.
Or Catlin or something like that.
Or Catlin or Derringer. I about guarantee you those locks are all British-made and... anyway, and so have probably almost interchangeable
when
parts.
The lock doesn't fit, you wrap it with rawhide. Just rawhide it into the stock, and it works.
Or you just get another one.
When you get to the cap lock era, the wrapping of rawhide to keep a lock in place really becomes pretty easy because you ain't got that frizzen in the way. So you can, and I've seen pictures of it where they've got rawhide over both ends of the lock. And so your lock doesn't have to fit perfect. You just put it in there, put rawhide over it, and you're done.
Yeah. Shot Shule and I had this discussion the other day because I was helping him track down some trapdoor stuff. And, there are the trapdoors that are made completely in the beginning from just junk parts that they bought, and then these companies would throw them all together. Well, he had a mismatching gun, but it was definitely a New Jersey stamped militia gun.
Right.
So at one point, this gun was all in one piece. It was not built that way. But it had a lock from the lock on it was from like a very narrow window of a 3-click tumbler with the date of 1873 on it. So that lock could only have been made, I think, from June of 76 to January of 77. The gun he has is made in 1889 or early in 1890. And the block on the top is from 1883 to 1886. But when I studied the gun and I really dove into what I found was those guns that were in the New Jersey militia and that gun had a great bore. All those guns had great bore because they never went to, when everyone was called to go to Spanish-American War.
Yeah.
They didn't go. So their gun bores are immaculate. But after 30 years, when they got surplus in 1916, all the doors were loose.
Right.
From thousands of times of the inspector picking that thing up and throwing the door. So they would take these guns, and the very first thing they do is put older surplus doors on them.
Yep.
And locks. And if the lock was gone, it was actually, they sold the guns for 75 cents a piece, and you could buy an entire lock for a penny. But it would cost you $1 to buy a spring. So they just replaced everything on there.
See, we've seen that happen up there at Fort Laramie. Something similar to that is they're going through and they found this bag of gun parts. And of course, it got brought to me because I'm the only one up there that knows much about them.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there looking at these trapdoors, and these trapdoors, they've got the crossed arrows, they got the eagle, but they got no date on them.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sitting there, got to digging around, looking, and found out these are first production 1873s.
Yeah, first variation. So you're talking when you don't have that number on there.
It's like the first.
You're talking the first 500 guns.
Yeah, and so I'm sitting there looking at it. It's like there's 7 of them, 7 blocks with no date, no 1873 on them. Then I went over. I got talking with one of the guys and asked him, because the Park Service at one time did use antiques.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him, I said, when they was firing the 45-70s, how many did they fire? Oh, like 6 or 7. Huh.
You got 6 or 7 doors?
Go over to the museum collection. I was like, how many of these guns used to be the Interp? Oh, these 7. And look at the gun, and they all got 1884 trapdoors on them. I was like, I know exactly what they did. The trapdoors were loose. Too loose to pass the inspection for the Park Service. So they put 84 trapdoors on these original 7 guns from the first stretch of the 1873. They got these doors fixed on them so they could shoot them in the demonstration.
I bet they didn't shoot them.
Yeah,
those 84 doors won't line up on those original 500 receivers.
Yeah, they had them all. I think there was some gunsmithing with a file involved.
That would be my guess because that receiver is too narrow for that door to go into. And so, interestingly enough, like you said, they would have had to file that inside of that a little bit. And I bet
all I know is that you've got 3 or 7 old-looking guns with 7 newer-looking doors.
Yeah.
And then we've got the doors, so it's like, these doors happen to match the patina on.
So were you allowed to put them back together?
No.
That's sad.
I just told them, I said, just stick the door with whatever one you think it goes with.
That's
the other thing, too, is no serial number to match them up with.
All those guns had the narrow, weak receivers like you're talking about, so that you can tell them when you look at them. It's ever so slightly, but it is there. And the funny thing is, those guns were all brought in the early 1880s and had those receivers stripped off of them and had what they call the star receivers put on, the newer 1880s. Yeah. So to find that is, we found one, but it was a year-long search. And you guys had 7 of them sitting there.
7. And the thing was, they pulled all the parts out of the board, so they'd taken the firing pins and stuff out of it too. And I guess they'd fitted them because when they got the new doors in, they didn't come with firing pins or anything.
Well, that would have been a fitting process too, because those are different variations too.
But
somebody had to be dedicated.
When I looked at them, I was like, well, I know exactly what they did. When they got these guns, the doors were loose, and so they swapped them out.
Well, you can do that with a later one, but they didn't realize what they had. Yeah. I don't feel bad if somebody's fixing an older or a newer 1884 where there was a gazillion of them,
Yeah.
Put a door on it, but to put a door on a first variation, that would hurt me. Let's see. Let's go back down here. Where were we? A lot of Belgian-made guns. Okay, we did that. Benjamin G. iPod Walker said Civil War cavalry troops in the beginning used sawed-off shotguns. I don't know how sawed-off they were because I see a lot of pictures of them. They're shorter.
Coach gun, like.
Yeah, but I always, when I pictured this story when I was younger, I always thought like 12-inch shotguns.
Right.
But when I see pictures, they're like 20-inch shotguns.
And
they are sawed off.
It's like that Baker's Baker shotgun that Pedersen
That
makes.
just looks wrong.
That is a copy of one that was used by the Confederacy. But the thing of it is, just because one particular group of soldiers use it does not make it standard across the board.
Well, Doug Duke sent us that picture of I believe it was during the Civil War we saw the other day, or was that 1840s? A Jack Hayes picture he sent us the other day, 1840s. Yeah. They had shotguns in that picture.
They had 3 shotguns.
And they weren't
shotguns.
Weren't extremely short, but
no, they weren't short at all. They were full length.
Yeah. Let's see. By land and sea. Hi, Doc. Good evening, y'all. Sharpshooter 74 said, I ought to loan you my Scope 74 Sharp for a video. However, she's a handful for what she's chambered in. What would you guess?
45, 120.
Probably. Maybe in 50, 110. I wouldn't know. I don't know. I never shot a
5110. That one was rare enough. 5140 did not exist during the time of sharps.
Yeah. Hey, Doug. Doug Dukes is in. Hey, boys. Salvador said, text me.
Yeah, text. Yeah, we found it there, Salvador.
Text, yeah. Thanks for the information, guys. You're welcome. Carrie Stottlemyre said the British YouTube channel TGS does a great history lesson on Boss & Co. and how they were the premier gunmaker of London. Basically trained people that founded Purdy and Holland. Yeah, I just saw that the other day, actually. Colt Patterson. That would be pain to work on the front. It was. I don't think anybody.
Both of us have had the privilege of taking one of those things apart and putting them back together. No.
There's a lot of moving pieces in them dudes.
No, there's a reason why Colt didn't get the contract on them.
Could you imagine having to
work? Service them in the field.
It's done. If it's broke down and if you personally purchased it, what do you do? If it goes down the field, what do you do? Throw it in the canyon?
Find a gunsmith that might be able to figure it out. But
I guess you might be able to still send it back to Colt. But Colt,
there's a reason why when they developed the Walker, they cut the moving parts down by almost a third.
Get this, you're the guy who paid, what is it, like $40 a piece for them in the 1830s?
Yeah, they weren't cheap.
And then it breaks down and you go to send it back. Well, Colt's been out of business for 3 years. There's nobody at that. Who in the world would work on it?
Well, and John Ehlers for a few years was just selling. He'd sit there with a big parts bin and put a gun together and sell a few guns every year. But
yeah. And it's not like today where you can just go.
The thing it was is funny is that after Colt went out of business during the Mexican War, the government went out of their way to buy every Colt Patterson they could get their hands on.
Well, because if they're working, they're working.
That's amazing how many Colt Pattersons were lost during the Mexican-American War and crossing the Rio Grande. There was a bunch lost in California too.
Yeah, heard about that.
Mostly the rifles, not the handguns. But
let's see. Rawhide, the duct tape of the 1800s. How many shots will those 45-70 trapdoors last before they start to loosen up? A lot more than people give them credit for. A lot of the loose doors, and the government discovered this themselves, especially on the 1866, didn't come from shooting. It came from hard tossing of the door for inspection. They tilt the gun up, throw the door open. On the 1866, it went really far. They started wearing those hinge pins out on the 1866s in 3 years. They didn't find them wearing from firing. That wasn't ever an issue as far as I know. And I have trap doors that over there, we got a big collection of them. And most of them have, take for instance that 1888 we have. That thing has seen a ton of service. It was an Arizona National Guard gun. It went overseas to Spanish-American War. After that, it brought home. Somebody has just fired it till there's basically no bore left in it, and that one still has a tight door. What really kills them is constantly throwing the door really hard, which can happen to anything, or firing hot smokeless loads, which a lot of them you got to watch out for. People have fired hot smoke. Now, that will eventually work that hinge loose.
Yeah, and what it's going to wear on the hinge, and it's going to wear on that block on the back, too.
Mm-hmm. But you literally cannot load 45-70 with black powder hot enough to hurt that action, in my opinion.
But that's one of the reasons why it's like when I got used to shooting them, is as I was going down, the old military manual says you point it down, you flip it up.
Mm-hmm.
I got to where I'd come to half cock, flip it up, and then turn it up, because then you're not throwing that door so hard open.
Well, the 66 went really far forward, right?
Yeah, it flies. It really flies open.
So they tried to remedy that on the 68 by that door only almost stands straight up and down.
Yeah,
but then you know what trouble happens.
Yeah,
falls back down on you while you're
trying
to
load. To about a 45 forward.
So on the 70 and the 73, they kind of found that middle ground where it stays open but doesn't go so far that it's stressing them. But a lot of times I found that if you just have a little bit of play in the door, replace your ejector spring and go in there and take a look at that pin, maybe, there's things you can do to make the original door work. If the original door isn't going to work at all, keep the original door, but if you want to shoot it, you can put a replacement door on it that'll work. Unless, and this I rarely see, the hinge hole on the receiver's worn. I've only seen that one time, and we didn't buy that gun, but it's, even then, you could technically change the receiver, but then you're changing the gun. So, but yeah, anyway, let's see. You would probably, if you shot black powder and you had a tight door, and you just shot normally like a lot of people, a couple times a week, you're not shooting 1,000 rounds every day, you probably never wear one of those doors out in your lifetime, in my opinion. Now, unless, I always have to put this caveat in there, there are some, now I think, H&K. Who made the
H&R?
H&R. Well, I got one over there. I can't think of it.
Yeah.
There are some H&R guns that had, when they were made, and they gave the older ones a bad reputation, where the door will pop open because of a basically it's a screw in the latch, and it's misengineered when they tried to reverse engineer that gun. And some of those you can wear the doors out to where they start popping open, but those are replica guns and not the originals. Let's see. Do you know anything about World War II German sniper scopes?
I got a crosshair on them.
I thought they just had a single stick.
Oh, wait, no, that's right. You got a post and a dot. That's one. Never mind. Well, I guess that goes to show I don't know anything about German snipers.
That might be Russian. I don't know if that's German or not. I know the PU scopes.
They got something in there to indicate where you hold it to shoot it. Things.
And sometimes they make it bigger at range.
Yeah.
That's all I know about them.
So in other words, we don't know anything.
Doug Duke said, hey, headed to Fort Union tomorrow.
You're going the wrong way. You got to come to Fort and learn it.
Yeah. Come on up and see us. Somebody asked a little bit ago, and I forgot to ask, is there anything left at Fort Wallace?
I don't know. Never been there.
I've never actually been there either. I think I heard there's a museum.
I know there's a museum.
It's just a little too far north and a little too far west to be out of my way all the time.
In 2018, they was doing the Beecher Island some ceremony thing, and I couldn't go because we had something going on at Ben's Fort, because I wanted to go on the last weekend that was going to be up there at Beecher Island, and I couldn't go. But I know they had something at Fort Wallace. Because that was the entire month of September, they had something going on. They had something going on at Fort Riley, then they had something going on at Fort Wallace, and then something going on at another fort, and then they ended with Beecher Island.
I was just doing some study on Fort Wallace. Let's see, because they had a scout there. A lot of people probably already know this story. Nobody knows if it's 100% true or not. It was told by Buffalo Bill and a couple other people. Billy Comstock was the head scout at Fort Wallace in 1868. Same time Buffalo Bill had just left Fort Larned and was working for the Kansas Pacific Railroad killing buffalo. Mm-hmm. And he had killed an enormous amount of buffalo with that 50-70, like an enormous amount. People started calling Buffalo Bill. Well, Billy Comstock out of Fort Wallace had the name Buffalo Bill.
Yeah, too. He was the first Buffalo Bill. Yeah.
And so supposedly they had a hunt competition. Have you heard that story?
Mm-hmm.
Where Billy Comstock went with a 44 Henry, and Cody went with his 50-70. Supposedly, he outshot him 60 to 46, but the story was because Comstock was riding along putting 3 shots of that 44 rimfire into each of them, whereas William Cody would sit back on his well-trained buffalo horse from about 100 yards and knock him down with 50-70. And then he got to keep the name. But nobody knows if it's true, because the more deeper I read all kinds of articles on it, several books, the deeper I studied on it, the only source we have for the whole story is William Cody.
Yeah.
So, but it's a good story. Let's see. I have my Pieta one. Never. Yo, Salvatore, you have the Pieta Patterson Blues too?
Glad I got a Birdie. I got one good one out of the deal.
Well, we can look at them Pietas from a distance. Every time I get the urge to go shoot it, I stop and I say to myself, let's not.
Makes me question whether or not a full cylinder of red dot inside that 36 would be enough to blow it.
Doug Duke says I have a receipt from a gunsmith to Jack Hayes for working on Patterson's.
That would be cool.
That'd be cool to see. Old one guy said, "Hi guys, nice hat, thank you." Kerry Stottlemyre said, "World War II scope."
You nerdle. Yep.
I know the word, but I can't ever
It's
say
such a good scope that the U.S. Army, the U.S. military adopted it because that's what Carlos Hathcock used.
Yeah, it's set with an external adjustment set in springs on the. Yeah. Yep. It was cheap. Yeah, your Pieta was cheap. Mine wasn't cheap.
Mine wasn't cheap either. It cost me more than 1 week's worth of pay.
Have either of us tried the famous second battle of O.W. Wall's Bailey-Dixon shot? Well, neither of us have a 50-90 to start with.
Well, 50-90, maybe 50-70. It was 50.
I heard it was the big 50.
Well, they called all sharps big 50 back in the day, whether it's 50-90 or 50-70.
I would think you would want 50-90 for that shot because I know 50-70, and that would be.
50-70 might reach out there. 45-90. And the thing is, I read that Billy Dixon actually used a 45. No, not 45-90. He had a 45-90.
He had 44-77, I thought.
Or do you have 44? Anyway,
we've discussed this, and I forgot.
I need to go back and read on it, but yeah.
The main issue I have with that shot is I can't see 1,500 yards. Can you?
You paint it purple, man.
Maybe that's what was going on. It'd be fun to try. We should try it sometime. I could get us back to about, right now, I could get us back to about 7. But that wouldn't be. I think it was more luck even on his part than he would like to admit.
Oh, he straight out said it was luck. And he said the first shot hit the berm. Second shot didn't hit nothing. And third shot, he aimed halfway in between the first two shots and nailed him.
Yeah. The sharpshooter said it was 50-90. I got one coming. Cool. Because I'd heard that he had a 44-77. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't a 45-70.
He might have had a 44-90.
I don't think he would have had a 45-70 and 74. I mean, he might have.
No, it wasn't 45-70. No, it wouldn't have been 45-90 because that didn't come out until 77.
But 44-77 was already popular.
Yeah, 44-77 was, and 45-90, not 45, excuse me, 44-90 was popular, but it was also, that one they said was a very harsh recoil gun.
I've been reading about some long range shots because I was doing for that 66, and people were pushing that 50-70 out there. If you find one thing in common with the hayfield fight and the wagon box fight, well, there's a lot in common, but the thing that I found that was interesting was in both times, when the natives pull back, they don't stop till right about 700 yards.
Yeah.
On both, and that seems outside of one troop there, John Garrett, that seems to be the range that they felt safe from that gun.
But you know what? We could make 50-90 because if you read 50-70 and 50-90 use the same case, they just squeezed another 20 grains into that cartridge.
Well,
so
no,
I think
the 50-90 is longer. 50-90 to 51-10 is the same.
Oh, because I thought it was when the first 50-90s that come out was the same case. They just compressed 90 grains in that case instead of 70 grains.
Well, I think it has a different. Now you might be right. I haven't studied that much, but I know 50-90 and 51-10 are the same with more powder.
Okay.
So
maybe that's what I'm thinking of. I thought it was 50-70 was the same.
That'd be pressing it to get that, but you might be right. Doug Duke said, I think did that shot at the O.W. Walls a few years back. Did you do? You did the O.W. Walls shot a few years back?
No.
Oh.
I did a shot on a coyote with a 6.5 Creedmoor at a mile one time.
That's cheating scoped.
Well, coyote at 1 mile with that scope I had and just a little dot down there. Dot cover.
Rifle he had was a 44-70. The rifle he shot was a borrowed 59. Now we have shot close. I thought 44. I'm going to go work on this air conditioner right quick. I'll be right back.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, Henry did do that. He's got a picture from that shot out there. Yeah, he was trying to say that a mutual friend of ours was out there and
pulled it off.
Well, he had a picture of him at that distance. I know that. I remember him posting it on Facebook where he stood up on the ridge and had somebody take a photo of him back from adobe walls, and all you see is a tiny little dot on the horizon.
Yeah. Turkey Creek said, I can click on these and make it bigger. Turkey Creek said, seems like it might have been Hanrahan's gun.
Hanrahan?
Yeah. See, I thought it was a 44-77 he had, but it could have been 44-70.
The thing it is, it's one of those things, like I said on history, I get to reading in one area and I forget what I've read on the other, so.
You have to forgive us.
My brain on the Southern Plains right now is sitting there going to Fort Larned. It's like, this is Southern Plains. I don't remember anything.
You think Fort Larned is the Southern Plains?
Well, it's part of the Southern Plains campaign.
Is it?
Yeah. It's like on the north, the middle of Kansas splits Northern Plains conflict and Southern Plains conflict.
So both it and Fort Dodge would have been in the Southern Plains.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
It's kind of funny when you look at those three forts between Hayes and Fort Dodge. They're not that far apart for all of Kansas that's around them. They're like right there in the middle, and they're like boom, 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 all within 200 miles of each other.
Yeah.
So, and Fort Wallace is way out there by itself.
But yeah, if you look on the map, they're like the forts here in Kansas. Everything they were fighting with is mostly south.
Yeah.
Southern Cheyenne, Kiowa, Comanche, Southern Arapaho. You go north of that, and everything is getting in more to the northern plains.
Yeah. Well,
which is the some of the Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, Northern Arapaho, and there are mixings in between. Like Beecher Island was mixture of Northern and Southern Cheyenne.
So, if Fort Larned's the guardian of the Santa Fe Trail, which I forgot, which obviously makes sense, that means it's the Southern Plains. What's the guardian of the Oregon Trail?
Fort Laramie, Fort Kearney.
So you got to go a lot further west before you get guarded.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. They put when in 1849 when they opened Fort Laramie, there was 3 forts put along the Oregon Trail. You had Fort Kearney, Fort Laramie, and Fort Hall. That is 3 trails to cover the distance between St. Louis and Oregon. 3 forts. And then at Fort Laramie, they say, one company of mounted rifles is more than enough. Oh, wait, we don't need the mounted rifles. Let's just go with regular infantry for 600 miles of trail.
So is Fort Wallace set for Oregon Trail traffic?
Wallace, no, I forget which one that is.
Well, it's not really. It's between the two.
No, I think it's like Burlington Northern Railroad is what that one is up on.
Well, I think it's funny because, like you said up there, you get your couple of, you get your Fort Phil Kearny way up there, and then you got your C.F. Smith way down here, and then Fort Laramie. You guys, they're so spread out up there, but right here we got 3 of them within 400 miles of each other.
Yep. Well, and Fort C.F. Smith, Fort Phil Kearny, and Fort Reno, they're not that far apart in reality. Those 3 are fairly close together. Days travel between the 2.
Okay, like today's day's travel or back then the day travel? Okay,
you could ride a horse and get there in a day if you.
So what would be Are they in 3s then about everywhere?
Let's see. Fort Laramie, Fort Kearny, not Phil Kearny. Fort Kearny, Fort Laramie, Fort Hall. That was a pair of 3.
Fort Phil Kearny, is that close to Fort Laramie?
Phil Kearny is, yeah. Fort Kearny is not. Fort Kearny is in Nebraska.
Yeah, okay.
Middle of Nebraska.
So I always figured that Fort Phil Kearny was up. I guess I didn't know.
It's in northern Wyoming.
I thought it was. Yeah, see, and that was in southern Wyoming. They can ride that in a day?
Oh, no. I meant Fort Reno, Fort Phil Kearny, and Fort C.F. Smith.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about.
No, it's a couple of days from Fort Laramie.
I was about to say.
A couple, 3 days.
So Fort Laramie doesn't really have a support system.
Well, actually, come to think of it, yeah, you could ride hard because, what's his name? I already had a brain fart. The guy that rode from Fort Kearny to Fort Laramie at Fetterman. Portuguese Phillips left the night of the 21st and arrived on Christmas night.
Yeah.
So 4 days. He made it 4 days from Fort Phil Kearny to Fort Laramie.
That still seems like, is it just the terrain or just because there wasn't as much traffic going up Bozeman compared to Oregon on Fort?
I think it was more of he thought he had wild Indians on his tail, and so he was spurring.
No, I don't mean that. I'm talking about the distances from everything. All these other forts, like you just mentioned, those 3 up north.
Oh, it
these
was
3
constant.
here. Everybody else is tied in together to a system, except for I have not seen the system that Fort Laramie set in.
Fort Laramie's on kind of on the Overland Trail, Oregon Trail.
But
Flat
it has
River.
no sister forts.
Uh,
I would call Fort Hays and Fort Dodge sister forts of Fort Larned.
yeah, its sister fort would be Fort Kearney.
Okay, it's just a long way away.
It's just a long ways away.
Gotcha.
But after you get in the 1870s, then yeah, it's Fort D.A. Russell, Fort Laramie, and Fort Robinson. Those three are all real close together, within 90
I forgot
miles.
about Fort Robinson. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're all three. There's like 90 miles between each one.
But
And
doesn't
so-
Fort Robinson come along later 1870s?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Once you get in 1874,
Yeah.
then you've got that system of three, because they decided to close down two of them, and it was supposed to be Fort Robinson and Fort D.A. Russell in Cheyenne. It was just to be Fort Laramie. And then, for whatever reason, the railroad changed direction, and so they decided to close Fort Laramie and Fort D.A. Russell, and they left Fort Robinson. And then you get ahead 50 years, or, well, not quite 50, a little over 50. Anyways, you get into the 1940s and 50s, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we need military posts back there. So they open Camp Guernsey just outside of Fort Laramie. And then they open Peterson, whatever that Air Force base is up there in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
Fort D.A. Russell is in the middle of that air base.
Okay.
So now you've got two bases that were right on historic forts that they decided to close.
Yeah, Turkey Creek said it's 320 miles, give or take, from Fort Laramie to Phil Kearney.
Yeah.
That's a long way for the worst Indian fighting in the country at the time.
Well, at that time, there wasn't very much for fights.
Between Phil Kearney and Laramie?
Yeah, not in 1849.
Well, I guess when you think of when it's built, but I'm thinking about your... Okay, so here's your good question that I had.
Oh, because then after that, they put a bunch of forts in between. You had Cottonwood Springs, which is Fort McPherson.
Okay.
You had Fort Mitchell. You had a bunch of other smaller posts put in.
And this plays into the question I have. We always hear about in 66, Red Cloud closes the Bozeman and burns the forts. Are those the forts that got burnt? Those littler outposts?
Yeah, it was. Well, Fort Reno was a smaller fort. Fort Phil Kearny wasn't that big, and Fort Reno wasn't that big. They hadn't had time to get big yet.
Did they rebuild Fort Phil Kearny after?
No. Well, I mean, they did a reconstruction of the one
for later, but not for
yeah.
service at the time.
No. See, no, they were after they closed them because Red Cloud wanted them closed. They went and built Fort Fetterman, not too far away from where Fort Reno was at, but inside their territory that was agreed in the '68 thing. So he tried to get that one closed, and Grant wouldn't said no. That's got to be there. We're not closing that one.
Grant's pretty particular. You know the reason that we didn't have 4570 in 1866 was because of Grant.
I wouldn't be surprised.
He didn't like the length of the cartridge. Allen told him a 45 caliber bullet with 70 grains of powder is the perfect trapdoor cartridge round. And he goes, we already adopted a 50 caliber gun in the 1865 Spencer. And he said, and I don't like the length, which granted they were trying to test them in 1865 rifles.
Right.
But he goes, he didn't believe in the length of the cartridge, and it was Grant's one call to invent the 50-70 cartridge instead of 45-70.
That's true.
It's interesting. Let's see. There was a question here. A couple questions. Let's roll back up. Good night, everyone. See you, Mill Creek Range. What model of trapdoor had the best all-around usable sights? Okay. There's several things. If you're talking about as simple can get, the 66 and the 68 50-70s got great little flip-up sights with a 3, 5, and 700 yard and fold down to 100. When you get into the 45-70 guns, the first ones, they're simple, but they're not that great. They're blocky. Little Bighorn, not that great of sights. After Little Bighorn, everybody, oh my goodness, we can't hit anything. We're getting out. Everything changes. And so we go to the type of variation 2 or 1, 2, and 3, they call it, of the 1877. Those are your roller coaster sights. Now, if you like simple, that's as good as it gets right there as far as it has usable, marked, easy to read sights. Now, the best sight by far, in my opinion, is the Buffington sight that comes out in 1883, and they call it the 1884 sight, but they use it all the way till the end, and it is a computer of a sight. And if you were an illiterate trooper who never fired your gun to begin with, you would have no clue what that thing's for when you flip it up and you see it canted at a level, triangular sight here, upper sight here. You have degrees of adjustment down here. For left and right windage, you have degrees of adjustment for raising every 50 yards instead of 100. And the bullet, if it's all set in an angle because it adjusts for the drift of the bullet past 100 yards when you pop it up. It's really good today for extreme target shooters. They didn't care for a lot of troops back then, but it was the best sight. It's basically a bullet drop compensator scope at the time. It's pretty amazing. So the 1884 has, if you're going to go out there and shoot and study your gun and not just be a raw troop or something, the 1884 has by far the best sighting system of any trapdoor. But if you just want plain and simple, the earlier 5070s or that post 1877 sight system, I don't care for the early 1873 sight system. It's very narrow. It's hard, big blocky front sight, real narrow rear sight, and it's hard to use. Let's see. Hope that answers your question. Favorite Louis L'Amour novel, if any?
I can't remember the titles of all of them.
What's your favorite? You like Conager?
Utah Blaine was one of my favorites.
Yeah. Mine has always been To Tame a Land.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I read that one. I don't remember what that was all about.
His name was Rye Taylor, I think. And all I remember, I remember the book. The book was really, really good.
Oh, yeah, I remember which one that is. Yeah, and he shoots the guy, and the guy keeps calling out, Rye. And the guy's like, I'm glad they think it's whiskey and not me.
He was undercover in Jackson's Hole. And he shot the guy because the guy knew him. The guy saying, Rye. One of the outlaws like, get him some whiskey.
That's been a long time since I read that one.
That's one of my favorite books because it covers a lot of years. Rye Taylor, yeah.
Turkey Creek, it's a lot less than 320 miles between Fort Phil Kearny and Fort Laramie. Because a long way driving there is 250 miles. And a straight shot's about 200.
Or is he talking about Kearny? There's two.
Now, if you're talking about Kearny, Fort Kearny in Nebraska, yeah, it's about 320.
Yeah, that's probably what he's talking about. A Texan said 18, and I'm late, boys. Oh, that's all right, you're here. Turkey Creek said Reno wasn't much more than a
cantonment.
Cantonment.
It was.
What's a cantonment?
Halfway between a camp and a fort.
Okay.
It was starting to get up there, and they were adding more to it. After Carrington went through, they were building it up.
Then it got stunted.
Yeah. It was supposed to be Fort Connor, and then they changed it to Fort Reno.
The Big 50 by Johnny D. Boggs. I've seen that book around. Yeah, I think you're the one who told me about it too, Doug. I need to read that. I don't know. I haven't had so much time for it. I haven't been able to read a fiction novel in 10 years because everything I'm reading is always pushing for the next or what I'm studying.
I finally sit down and forced myself to read one the other night because they're at the hospital, the little gift shop. They get these donations of books from the library that they can't give away when they're discarding them.
Mm-hmm.
And so she sells them for the paperbacks for like 50 cents a piece. And there's been a bunch of Westerns coming through. So it's like I grab them and I can sit down there and them little 200-300 page Westerns I can read in an hour.
Yeah.
But I read one the other night just for giggles and grins.
Yeah. And sometimes, I've noticed that if the author is a more modern author who's understanding the way people think now and understanding the internet's around, the historical accuracy on a lot of just regular, from what I understand, is getting really good. I haven't read one. I tried to sit down and read Bram Stoker's Dracula last October, and I bought the copy, and I was like, I want to sit down and read this thing cover to cover. And I got through a couple pages. The last one I actually read that was a nearly fiction novel was The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Even though it's not actually fiction, it's written as a fiction novel. And I could read that one.
Turkey Creek, you're still 75 miles off because Fort Laramie is 75 miles north of Cheyenne. I know because I drove from Cheyenne to Fort Laramie quite a bit.
Cheyenne to Buffalo.
Yeah. Now, if you're thinking the town of Laramie, it's about the same. But Fort Laramie is 75 miles north of there.
All right, boys. It's not all about the last 10 miles. Oh, Reno and the Tennesseans headed to bed. So anyway. Yeah, we got any more commenters? We got 47 people in here. It's almost
doing pretty good.
You can turn that back on now, Angelica. Shut that air conditioner off. It got hot. Hurry, didn't it?
Oh, it's just comfortable for me.
Oh, I forgot you like warm weather. I like about 45, 50 degrees. That's where I thrive. I'm a good fat boy. I got lots of insulation. Salvador said, okay. All right, Duke. Sharpshooter said, what's your thoughts on the 5140?
Well, it's good for elephants. That's what it's designed for. Otherwise, it's overkill for North America. It won't do anything that 5090 or 5070 won't do.
Overkill is still a kill.
Yeah, that's true.
There is no such thing as overkill.
But they came out way too late to be in the buffalo hunting game.
Of course, if you break your stock every 15 rounds, it might be overkill.
Yeah, there's that too.
Because I've heard that they're hard on stocks.
But yeah, you're doubling the amount of powder you're using for one bullet when you can shoot 2 buffalo with.
Gina Wood says she's putting a liner in a vest.
Oh well, we might have to run over there and see if she got about done yet.
77 transition trapdoor yet? No, I haven't actually looked for that one per se. I got it at a 73, and I got a 77 carbine, but that's one that I guess I hadn't thought about it. It's still eluding me as a transitional from 77 to. I don't consider the 79 a variation. I definitely don't consider the 78 a variation because that's. I've had a lot of people tell me about their Air Model 1878, and I always have to sadly inform them that was a deformed 73 stamp that was stamped too deeply. So it's not that. It's maybe rare as in the variation of the number, but the gun itself is absolutely no different than an 1873, late 1873, right before. It literally, those were the last ones before they started stamping them, 84. Let's see. Salvador said, I've been busting out stuff for the event. I'm a last minute person. Well, you are. You got quite a ways to go from what I understand. I'll be glad to meet you. It'll be interesting. Sharpshooter said, I'm using a 675 grain bullet and scooting at about 1388 FPS using 1 FOE. I'm at 128.5 grains compressed and 0.075 inches. What started your fascination with the trapdoor? I had one for many years. I bought it for $500. I kicked myself though because the guy was, and it was a guy that I had known who had passed away, and his collection went up for sale at a local gun store, and he had a Boar Sharp sitting there for $500 too. And I wanted the one with a hammer because I was like, this is what I like in the movies. It's like in every Disney movie. So I bought it. And then I got to where I was like, I really liked it because it's almost like the Colts. All the reenactors were like, the sharp door or the trap door was the worst of all. And
Right.
It was one of those things I'd always heard. And then I got to shoot and I'm like, it's not that bad. It's not better than any of the others, but it's not necessarily worse in a military setting. And what I realized was they were conflating rolling blocks and Sharps hunting rifles with rolling blocks and Sharp military rifles.
Right.
Now, a rolling block and Sharp's hunting rifle are built to take a bigger cartridge. But in a military setting, you don't need all that bigger cartridge. And so I realized that for the money, and then as I studied onto it, then he showed up after I'd sold it, and I really wanted one back, and Duke started talking to me a couple of years ago about, the history of the wagon box fight and all this. And when Caleb and I were like, well, let's get one or two and see what we think of those 50-70s. And last I counted, we were at 14 different variations sitting over there. Duke saw them yesterday. He walked in. He was like, man, I don't think you even knew there were that many trapdoors over there.
Yeah, I had no idea.
And some of them we have two of the same variation. And then it was just something that snowballed. And I'm just the kind of guy, it's like with Remington and Colt. People were always telling me this is a junk gun that's no good. It should have never been adopted. And so I wanted to go into why is that the case? And the more I studied it, the more I found that it's really, as far as military rifles, no better or no worse. Sometimes it's better. Some cases it's worse. But the story of what the government pulled off with, as Ian McCollum says, no monies, because they had no monies, and they pulled this off for over a almost 40-year period. It's a very impressive story. And when you look at it, they didn't lose very much with them because the whole story is not just the gun, it's the tactics, it's the commanders, be it good or be it bad, it's the situations the guns are in, and just the spirit and morale of the men at the time. determines whether or not the gun, quote unquote, is successful.
Right.
And so there was that's kind of where I started with it, and I really just fell in love with the first couple 50-70s that I shot. And after that, I was like, I want to shoot all of them, every one of them, even the 20 gauge. So we spent 2 years hunting every one of them down, except for, like a doc just reminded me, we don't have a transitional 1877 yet.
And you don't have an 1870 Kirby.
Actually, I have one about to be. That one with the broken stock that was sitting over there. It's going to be an 1870
about
Kirby.
To be ain't the same thing as.
Well, $18,000 ain't much to a lot of people, but it's a lot to me. So that's where Caleb and I got discussing it. It's like, how deep are we going to go on these variations that maybe 300 of them exist or did at one point? And you're like, so when you think about it, it's lucky if half of each of those variations still exist today. So now you're looking at like 150, and they're expensive. Finding the 65 was hard enough. It took us a year to find that rimfire 65, and it wasn't 100% correct. Let's see. Sharpshooter 74 said recoil is pretty manageable for a massive cartridge. I've gotten to shoot under 2 inches at 200 yards multiple times. A shoulder pad is definitely recommended for it. I imagine if I shot that, I would develop a flinch, because I know I do with those kind of guns. And it takes me forever to beat a flinch once I develop it. I got to go back down to 22s for like 6 months. Do you ever had a gun that gave you a flinch? Brown Bess?
Yeah. I about took my foot off first time I shot that thing.
That was funny. Not to hammer on the trapdoors anymore, but that was on the 66. That was one complaint. The triggers were pulling off so hard, the men were shooting the dirt 3 foot in front of them. And I was like, maybe that's a training issue. Because I shot a lot of 50-70s, and this one guy who'd lost his group had lost a shooting competition reported that the guns were junk, the triggers were too hard to pull, it bruised and lamed the shoulder for 2 weeks. And I was like, that gun don't even, because it's so big, you don't feel it when you shoot that round. Let's see. Violana C said, Garrett, I agree. A trapdoor was the right tool at the right time in the right place. Also, the story of amazing level of craftsmanship and manufacturing them is just inspiring. Oh, yeah. Because if you messed up the part, you paid for it. And there's something to be said for having the same guys building basically the same kind of rifles for their entire life. They didn't change that tooling. You know that as well as I do. Yeah, Turkey Creek said you're correct. It was more like 230, not 320. That's what I get for trusting my 70-year-old member.
Well, you're right for Laramie, Wyoming.
But yeah. Oh, yeah, guys, the 66 episode, we're going to film some on it tomorrow morning, but it's in the editor outside of some shooting footage.
Right.
So I'm hoping a week from Sunday we'll have it. This is going to be, I always say this every time, and I keep thinking, I'm not going to say this again. This is the biggest one we've ever done, and every time it gets bigger.
Right.
You know why? Because I keep finding more books. You know the feeling?
I know the feeling.
And then you look back at a video you made 2 years ago, and you're like, huh, that's cute.
That's one of the things, like on the podcast for Red Cloud's Wars. Like I started pulling out books, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stay with McDermott's work, get through this one, because McDermott has got more detail and the 2 volume book that he did than a lot of these other ones have detail. I was looking at them for little quotes and stuff, but yeah, it's the more books you add, the bigger and deeper it gets.
Timber Drifter wants to know if either of us had our hands on the Merwin Holbert. No, I've read a lot about them because I almost had one once, or my brother did. But I don't know about Duke, but I have never had my hands on one, but I have the story pretty well down.
Yeah,
Wait, we did. There's one at Fort Laramie, wasn't there? The Merwin Holbert. Twist the barrel, pull forward.
Was there?
There was one. Yeah, we handled it. Yeah, because you had a Remington there, you had a Colts there, you had a Merwin Holbert.
I know they had Smiths. They had Remingtons.
Smith. You did. There was one there. It was in the compartment box with the ones that were in pieces on the north side. Or not the north side, it would be the right side when you walk in. You know where the 1860 was that would come out of the creek in the drawer?
Yeah.
Well, in there was at least pieces of one, and I don't think I handled it, but I saw it.
I guess I don't remember that one.
What was that gun that the spring broke on?
Which one?
Well, there was a gun that had a broken spring, but I can't remember what, it wasn't the Sharps. It was a really cool long barrel gun, a really cool rifle. And the hammer had a broken hammer spring. I was trying to think of that the other day.
I don't know. I handled so many guns up there. I can't remember what all they had.
Well, I know there was pieces of one there, and the coolest thing he had there was the Colt with the upside down vest.
Yeah.
That was a cool gun.
And I thought they had a Colt in there that was chambered in 44 Henry rimfire, but I was wrong. They don't.
Huh. So no, I can't give you a on-hand review, but it is a great story. The way they manufactured those things so tight, they're airtight, and if you pull the barrel out, it'll suck itself back in because it was a genius of manufacturing. And some people consider it the best manufactured, or not manufactured, the best designed gun of the period. But you know, it's all in the eye of the beholder, I guess. Thoughts on the Schofield number 3 revolver worth Colt single action? I'll expand that to number 3 and Schofield. Okay, so you're saying Schofield number 3. I'll expand that to just the number 3 or the Schofield versus single action. We've shot both of those considerably.
Mm-hmm. I don't care for the Schofield grip because I'm used to shooting a Colt. So when I grab a Schofield and point and aim, that barrel's sitting like that. I gotta turn my wrist down to line up the sights. Now I've handled the first model American reproduction, and that one is just like Colt. When I pull it up and cock it, my sight eyes are already lined up on the sights.
Snapper's got the cylinder of ours, the first model reproduction. So.
But I just, for that reason, I don't care for it because I'd have to learn how to shoot it.
So I wonder if that was a thing in history. People were so used to that Colt at the time when that came out from the cap and ball revolvers that was probably a bear to get used to.
Yeah. And the other thing is that you have to reset it because my thumb ain't long enough to reach up there and hit that hammer without resetting. And that's one thing I noticed on the first model American that I handled is that I didn't have to reset to. I could just reach up there and grab that hammer. So there wasn't much difference between it and gripping a Colt.
Now, the funny thing is they made speed loaders back then that could be used contemporaneously with that. Now, they're kind of cool little wooden things that you pull the center out and it falls out. But I will say that the speed load of the gun, if I was, what do they call this, fantasy booking right now? The single town marshal versus the 7 bad guys, and you have to do it, which probably didn't happen. But, you know, obviously I would take that. But if I was that same town marshal who had to ride out of town for a month, it might be away from civilization and anywhere where I could get that gun fixed, I'm taking a single action army because it's so much simpler.
Yeah.
So few parts compared to. They're both good. They both definitely have their strengths and their weaknesses. The Schofield and the Smith binds like a Remington because it doesn't have a bushing.
Yep.
So.
Well, it's like Mike Bellevue said, the Schofield is a shootist's gun. Mm-hmm. The Colt is a fighting gun. So if you're going to take it into a gunfight, take the Colt. If you're going to shoot at a shooting gallery, take the Smith & Wesson.
Think about it like AK versus AR. But I know there's mud tests that say one thing and the other. AR is your high speed, low drag. You know, everything works on it. You can get quick reloads. You got this fast, speedy little bullet. You got, you know, all the things you can put on it. Versus, and that'd be your Smith & Wesson versus your Colt, which would be your AK. Plain, simple, rugged.
Works.
So think about it like that. You get your speed, you get your fancy stuff that you might need someday, or you get rugged and reliable.
Yep.
That's the difference between the two in my mind. I ain't even going to read that, Turkey.
I'll read it. Yeah, I don't care for the town of Laramie much either, but I will say they do have a couple nice restaurants down there I like.
Okay. Salvador said, Duke, when are you making a bead buckskin scabbard for Garrett's rifle trapdoor rimfire? I've seen up there at Fort Hays they had a deal of Black Kettle stuff on a dummy, and I don't know if this was the original or copied from it, but he did have a rifle carbine length in a scabbard that was slung on his back, and it was basically one of those Hudson Bay style scabbards, but it was supposedly based on if it wasn't the one,
right?
And so I would say, I mean, But that'd be an expensive one for buckskin to make a full length.
Yeah, and I'd make you buy the hide too.
Yeah, I know that wouldn't be nice. I don't want to do that. That's expensive.
I'd take 3 hides at $200 a hide. Maybe more.
To make a carbine length?
Oh, carbine length? No, I wouldn't take.
Well, he said 8 for the rimfire trapdoor.
It'd take quite a few buckskins. It'd take at least 3.
I'd like to do a deeper dive into those captured 1865s that they picked up from Little Bighorn.
The beadwork alone is going to take a month if you want the whole thing beaded, or how much beadwork.
I don't know. I'm not necessarily all that into needing all that, because I'd pay all that for that beadwork and then drop it one time and all the beadwork would fall off. Not that you couldn't put it on where it stayed, but I'd be worried about knocking it off. Jason Dunham said, I knew a sheriff in Hutchinson, Colorado. Hudson County, Texas. Sorry, that carried a second gen Colt single action as a duty gun as recently as 20 years ago. And guys that know how to use them, I wouldn't want to go up against them. Stephen Sheets said, good evening, everyone. Hey, Garrett, and hey, Duke. Hi. Of course, his deputies carried Glocks. Yeah, probably had a little backup going on, would be my guess. So, what's your, not talking about Smith & Wesson or anything, as we just were, but where you can, what's your favorite gun handgun excluding Colts from the 19th century?
That'd be the first model American.
Yeah.
It just feels good.
Yeah.
I wish I'd get enough money to buy one of them.
I'm not so sure that the originals aren't a touch smaller than the replicas. Because
the replica, they basically modified the Schofield.
Yeah, and they had to beef it up for 45 Colt smokers.
Yeah, it's basically the Schofield that's been modified to the grip.
Because Ethan I think he has one of each of those. When we get back doing videos on them, and it seems like those originals have a lot narrower grip frame.
So the Schofield cylinders with snapper, you said?
The Model 3, the number 1, Model 3 first issue.
Oh, that experimental one that I found for you guys?
No, not that one. That's a Russian issue, I think. Wasn't that the Russian experimental model?
I don't know.
I can't remember. He has 2 of them, and one of them is snapper. One of them had the bore. Somebody had tried to rebore the cylinder out to take 4440 or 44 something. Basically, they'd done some crazy stuff to it, and
they screwed it up.
Yeah, and so he sent it to Snapper to have the cylinder sleeved. I don't know if he did or not.
Gotcha.
See you later, Turkey Creek. Sharpshooter said 1875 Remington, in my opinion. Yeah, it's almost Colt.
It's basically Colt.
I know it looks like a Remington.
It's a front heavy Colt.
If you look at the 1890 Remington, it's definitely keep your nose in the wind. Your eye
Remington is a copy of a Colt all the way through. They changed just 2 placement of 2 screws. They had a screw to the hand that carries the hand up on the hammer, and they take away a screw for the trigger and bolt. They put the trigger and bolt on the same spring. Otherwise, that is a Colt action all the way through.
And it's a Colt frame too.
Yep, it is.
Because it more, in my mind, it copies the Root closer than it does the Whitney, or the Adams. So, okay, so you're about to head over the plains for the mountains in 1878. Yeah, that's past my time. What rifle and revolver are you taking? Okay, 1878.
What plains? Where are you at?
You're about to head out over the plains for the mountains. So I'm assuming he's talking you're going from...
Well, are you heading across the Utah plains, the desert, or are you heading across the middle plains to the Colorado and Wyoming Rockies?
Independence. Heading for the South Pass.
And 1878, I'd be taking along a Winchester and a Colt.
It's vanilla, but it's hard to argue.
I mean, 4440, both of them, because by the time 78 comes around, you ain't going to have a lot of marauding natives anymore.
My first,
they're going to be on the reservation at this point.
Mm-hmm. My first thought is always buffalo for food, but in 1878, it's pretty slim pickings.
Considering Yellowstone Kelly was killing buffalo and grizzly bears with a 44 Henry cartridge.
Yeah. It could be done.
Yeah, you ride up beside them, put one behind the ear, they're coming down.
Okay, so I think you think of things in terms of, because you're so studied on it, scouts. I think of things in terms of homesteading usually, or farming. And so if I'm taking a family, I probably can't afford those two guns. And I would take those two guns, but you said it, so I'll try to do something different. 78, I'm taking a Colt shotgun if I can afford it. And probably realistically, I would have a shotgun and a pistol probably. But if I take my ruthers, I'm going to have a 73 Winchester and a shotgun. And the pistol would be extra if I could afford it. Because I don't see myself as, I'm not a gunfighter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in 78, you're going to run into maybe the Cheyenne coming back. But that's about it.
Yeah.
As far as I know, right?
Things are going to be pretty quiet out there.
Yeah. So I'm going to be thinking about get food, which could be either birds or deer. And it's interesting because think about like the books Little House on the Prairie. Those are set in the early 70s. And what do you Charles Ingalls gun?
He got a shotgun, right?
Muzzleloader.
Oh, yeah.
Round ball, muzzleloader, and everybody in those books did, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that he had a Lehman, but she definitely goes into detail in one of the chapters on casting round ball, cleaning the gun with grease every night, shooting it every day to make sure it's clear.
Well, Bill Hickok had his 51 Navies.
Yeah.
Up through 76.
Well, he died with a Model 3 Army.
Yeah.
So at least he got to rimfire, but he wasn't to centerfire. You know Bill's rifle?
Trying to think. I don't remember which one he had.
Sporterized 1868 trapdoor. They buried him with it.
Mm.
That was his Buffalo getter, supposedly. So 50-70. Okay, so a few more. Or sub in a Schofield. Same question. Okay, we'll do this one more time. Same question, 1848. That's way more interesting to me than 1878.
See, in 48,
we got lots to worry about going in 48 on the Oregon Trail.
If I get my hands on one at Patterson, because you're not going to find a Dragoon very early on. Mm-hmm. And I ain't going to worry with a little pocket pistol.
Walkers are all in Texas still.
Yeah. And in military hands if they're not in Texas. Yeah, Patterson, I could get my hands on it too, if I can find two of them. And then I'd be torn between a double barrel shotgun and just a nice
Plains rifle.
Yeah. Because Plains rifle, I'd probably want something like a 58 or 62 cal.
Yeah, that's a way more interesting story in 1848. Man, you're right. If I had to have a gun and you can't get a Patterson, I'm taking that over there. But maybe in percussion for a handgun, double barrel. The guns I love nowadays wouldn't be on the list because they're basically hardware store grade guns like your Northwest Trade gun and stuff like that. So I'm gonna have to go with you. I'm gonna have to go with a percussion double barrel shotgun for sure if you can get it. Mm-hmm. And rifle wise in 48. Are we concerned about caps and using them up? Them getting wet?
48, yeah, that's gonna be hard to come by caps. So you'd want to carry them in a waterproof tin.
If I can get caps, I'm going with a heavy caliber Lehman trade gun because parts are available for that thing everywhere through the West. So yeah, double barrel flint or percussion cap pistol, Lehman rifle, preferably flint if I can find it. Those aren't very common at that point, and a double barrel shotgun. Yeah. The story is a lot better because if you're going by yourself in that point in time, you're not probably going to make it. Unless you're in a big wagon train. Right. You're going to get chewed up and spit out. Okay. Sharpshooter said 74 Sharps, 5090, 73 Colt and 45, possibly an 1873 Winchester and 45. I don't think I had that gun. Now you could get both the Colt and the Winchester and 4440 and have interchangeable.
Yep.
That's probably what he meant.
Yeah, because that's what he says down below there.
Yeah, 4440 is what he meant, I'm sure. No. They were. Josh Harris said the 1872 Colt open top, very available civilian market. They were, but the supply was not very big with 7,000, I believe, only made. Not all those went west. So running into one of those is going to be it's not impossible, but it would be a rarity. They were available. They just didn't have much production. I'd take 4440 all day. Yeah. I don't know, if I had to, I could deal with a 50-70 single shot, especially in 78, because you're still going to be able to shoot elk and long-range deer and moose.
If you're up north, you'll catch some buffalo.
Yeah, so 4440 would be great for self-defense, crossing the plains and stuff, but once I get where I'm going, I would probably carry a single shot 50-70 at that point, or 45-70 every day, because it's just, why limit your range? And you're not really worried about marauding herds. Okay, so the real question at that point is, do you take a rolling block or sharps?
Sharps.
In 45-70 or 50-70?
45-90 if I could get it.
It'd be a good flat trajectory and reach way out there. I'd probably say a sharps in 50-90 just for the romance of it. Just for
a sharps carbine 50-70, that wouldn't be bad.
I don't know. But if I have to carry a single shot, I want everything the long barrel can offer me if I'm using it for hunting purposes.
Now, short barrel carbine will do the job just as fine.
For as far as you can see, probably. As far as I can see.
Riding on horseback.
Okay, good question. Oh, 50-70 is my favorite right now. We're talking about if I have to be up in the mountains in 1878 and I have to reach way across the canyon or something, 50-90 would probably be better. 50-70 is probably always going to be my favorite at this point for all-around use. Sharpshooter 74. Between the both of you, what do you think is the optimal barrel length for the 73 Colt?
I really love 7.5-inch barrel.
I can hit a 7.5-inch barrel. I can do long range shooting. I mean, people see me do it on camera, even in a 72 open top. And it gets down to 5.5. I can shoot pretty good. Every inch you take off that thing, my ability to shoot just goes down.
Every inch you take off the barrel, it adds 4 feet of circle around your pattern.
It gets down to where I love the 3.5-inch Thunder that they make today. You shot mine, that bird's head grip, but I can't hit anything with it.
With the belly gun, you better be pressing bellies together before you shoot.
But I can shoot all day long with 7.5, so I think that's the optimal length. It depends on the century too. You're not jumping into cars and stuff trying to take that 7.5-inch. You got room with what you're doing to make that work.
If you use a military or the cross draw holster, they're great.
Yep. Yeah, Joshua Harris, that's a good choice right there. He said he'd still be hanging on to his Richard Mason conversion 51 and the sharps and prevalent caliber. That'd be
that's not a bad combo.
Pair to draw to, especially if you know how to use them and you got lots of practice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we're going at an hour 30.
You look like you're getting tired.
I am. I still got to go finish sewing a pocket on a jacket.
Well, yesterday, this time last night, you was wild for sound. You over the jet lag.
True. Yeah, I'm starting to. And I didn't take a nap today either. Although I slept until 11 o'clock. You think I want to get tired?
Well, you had every right to. Evidently, it was comfortable there.
It wasn't bad, man. Well, it was like an ice box when I got in there because somebody turned the AC on when it's 60 degrees outside.
See, I think it was hot in there.
Oh, I turned that AC off. It's cold. I finally had to crawl under the blankets.
Yeah. That's what I told Noah. He's got plenty of wool blankets with him if he needs. I'd rather cover up more. Okay, so we're about there. I think Deke's getting tired. What do you say we run for another 10 minutes?
Yeah, give him another 4.
Oh, another 4 or 5? You don't want to go 10?
Well, that, and I want somebody to be up at your mom's house when I go to get my jacket. So if Rebel decides to bite me, I don't get 8.
Yeah, come on, dude. Keep rocking that hammer back. You'll feel all right. Oh. Louisiana Gray. Timber Drifter said, in the book Land Cruising and Prospecting by A.F. Wallace, he tells a story about a fella in 1883 using a spring needle gun. What gun was that? In 1883, I won't take up all our time with this explanation, but in 1877, they started taking the narrow receivers off of the original trapdoors and selling them as parts. They sold them to Schuler, Hartley, and Graham and Bannerman and some other people, and they built their guns off of those, even though they weren't real Springfields. And there were 10,000 of those guns running around the 1880s. If it's not that gun that they built out of those parts, it's a 50-70, because in 1883, almost all of them were of the 45-70 trapdoors were still in military hands, unless they were built together from scrap parts by other companies. And so if they talk about a needle rifle, usually historically, when people talk about the American needle rifle, they are referring to the 1866. And the reason they do that is because Buffalo Bill had an 1866 called Lucretia Borgia that he nicknamed, or he called his needle rifle, because it had a long firing pin. And so that is historically, when people say needle rifle, they're talking usually about the 1866 long gun and 50-70. It's a 3-bander. So I hope that answers your question. By the way, just to add to that, when they say the Springfield needle gun, even Custer called the 1866 Sporter gun he had a Springfield needle gun.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's pretty common. Let's see. I really want to Uberti Henry. What do you guys think of it?
That's a good one.
I love it.
Yeah.
He's got one, and
we was nailing a man-sized target at 300 yards with it.
We put a lot of rounds through that gun.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to, I think, like the smokeless better than the black.
Yeah, it does.
But it shoots with that smokeless. It's like shooting a giant 22, and it just laser beam.
Yeah, it did really good. The smokeless. It did not do well with black powder. But what's funny is we shot all that smokeless through it after we shot the black powder, and I went to clean it, and I figured everything was going to be messy. Well, three patches, and I had a clean bore. So the smokeless had cleaned the bore out.
Yep. Worked pretty good. Yeah, I give it a thumbs up. Of course, that's the only Henry I've ever shot, so I can't really compare it to much.
The only way I give up that Henry is if somebody offered me a trade for one in 44 special.
44 special?
44 special. Because then I could get the first model American reproduction in 44 special, and I'd have 2 guns that would be good for really early 1870s.
If I had to have one lever gun right now, which I'm pretty well sold out of lever guns, except for a couple of Caleb's got there. But if I had to have one lever gun right now, it would be a 66 and 44 special. I think Cimarron's the only one that offers them, just because I got a pile of 44 special.
And if I get a 66, I want to get a carbine, but they are not currently being imported right now because they haven't made any.
Only the rifles?
Yeah, they've got the full-length rifles, which I've had one of those. Those are nice, too.
I think I'd like the full-length rifle better than the carbine. The octagon barrel?
Octagon, yep. It's just like handling a Henry.
Except for it's got
a wood.
Except for on that Henry, no matter how much I've always told myself I wouldn't do it, I forget to do the Henry hop, and then I got... Oh. Yeah.
And we had a really close call because of that.
Hey, I noticed you forgot once, too, and so did you.
So we're sitting there riding home, and that was after I was here last time we shot that. And Garrett was the last person to shoot that gun.
Yep.
And he forgot to do the Henry hop.
And that was on the last round, too.
So, and then he ejects it, and nothing comes out. Oh, that was the last round. And then he moves his hand, and he levers it again, and he puts the round in the chamber, and he lowers a hammer. Well, I didn't think to check it.
Yep.
We load it in the back of my Jeep because it's getting cold. And we're driving back, getting in front of Caleb's house, and that gun had shifted in the back seat, and it had cocked itself in the back seat of my Jeep.
Don't forget to do the Henry
hop.
It
Wasn't even a seat. I didn't have the seat in there, but in the back of my Jeep, it went full cock, pointed at my behind in the front seat. And I get out, and Caleb's like, "Oh, it's on full cock." And I said, "It's a good thing it's empty." And I throw the lever, and a bullet comes out and hits me in the face.
The funny thing about that was that last time I thought I'm going to avoid it by holding clear back on the receiver. And evidently my thumb was just enough to stop that last round from.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process you got to learn.
Yep.
Yeah, that's my story. Let's see. We're about done here. Let's see. We had a couple more. I figured it was trapdoor. Thanks for the show, fellas. Have you guys used Hodgin 777 powder before? So what are your thoughts on it versus original black? It's hotter. I know some guys who love it because it's hotter and you can get it. It's better than Pyrodex. You got any thoughts?
Anybody that uses anything besides Holy Black is a heretic.
That's not you, AR American. Everybody else except AR American. But no, and Blackie Thomas. AR American, Blackie Thomas are safe. But no, yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I know a lot of people do it because they can buy it at the store.
Yeah, that's the thing. And black powder. GoX is back in production because Estes Rockets bought it, but it's $40 a can.
Yep, and you gotta wait on it.
And I don't hold it against people so much for using Pyrex just because it's easy to get a hold of. But if you can get away from it, do so because that stuff is just so nasty.
I don't mind them using it in a brass frame 44, 51 maybe.
Yeah. Put it this way, if you're going to shoot that stuff, Pyrex or 777, when you clean your gun, give it a bath.
Yeah.
Don't just clean the bore and put a little oil on it. Give it a bath.
Mm-hmm.
Scrub every part. Because that stuff is so corrosive. It's basically just salt, peter, and charcoal.
As soon as you go start using flintlocks, you can't use the stuff anymore anyway, so you leave it behind.
Yeah, you're gonna have to have real black powder to ignite the Pyrodex in a flintlock.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, there's no guarantee it's gonna ignite.
And Louisiana Gray, so I know the 777, that's the only thing I will use besides black. Yeah, I've actually heard good things about 777.
But the only on the 777 is that if you compress it like you compress black powder, you get really erratic velocities. So, really to make 777 work the most efficiently, you have to seat the bullet to the same depth every time without that much compression. You got to find out what compression it likes, and that's why I never mess with it. It's finicky.
Now, if you want a good video on it, of course, Everything Black Powder has a couple videos on it too, but AR American's got some videos on it too, where they do use it for cartridge 45 Colt, and they get a really good performance, but it's almost good enough performance to where I would be worried about shooting it in an open top myself.
Yeah.
But it'd be just perfectly fine, and especially a modern replica of a 73 single action, but it's hotter than your 40 grains of black powder, which is already pretty hot.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Doug Duke said, Rangers call it 50-70 of any kind a needle gun, but I have seen some 45-70 needle guns in reports. Oh, very interesting. Arizona Frontiersman, great show as always. Thanks a bunch. Louisiana Grace said 777 is cleaner than Pyrodex or the others. Kerry Stottlemyre said, I agree with Duke. No substitutes. Yeah, that's kind of the way it is. Louisiana Gray said, yeah, I made my own black, so always have a good stock of it. Same here. Sharpshooter 74 said, I only use mine in my Gen 3 Colt. I'd only use it in my Gen 3 Colt. All right, we're through. Wait, almost. Salvatore said, mine will be a 66 carbine and an open top or Model 3 and 44 rimfire. Oh, if you were back in history? Yeah.
He's a little late to the show.
Yeah, he's a little behind. That's all right. Yeah, that'd be a good combination.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, Sabater, we see you on Friday.
Yeah. Hopefully. We got some buffalo hide scrapers you're going to have to check out and some other stuff. John Dunham said, have a great night, boys. All right, guys, we're going to shut her down right there. This is your show. I keep forgetting this isn't a regular Tales on Trails. So.
Yeah, well, whoever you pick one of us and we'll end the thing. So yeah, just kind of keep an eye out on what's going on in Tales of the Trails. Be doing the Fetterman fight here next week, I hope, if not the week after. Garrett's got to re-record something for me.
Two words.
2 words messed up a whole 5-minute song. But yeah, we I'll be releasing that one here in a couple weeks, and just keep going on with the Red Clouds War after Fetterman. It's all going to be the downhill slope. And then that's all we got.
Trust in God and whatever you say.
Keep your powder dry.
Bye. I don't have to wait.